Can't go anywhere
Right.
yet.
We're back in the regular session.
Yep.
I just have to go down to the bottom here. Are we ready?
Yep.
You're ready.
Okay, so we are back at the City of Menasha Common Council meeting, and we are on item
You.
Q, number 1. And before we make any motions to adjourn into closed session, Director Schrader, would you mind going over the memo?
Certainly, thank you, Mayor. So before the Common Council today is a mutual land needs discussion, I guess we'll call it. So over the last year or so, the Appleton Water Plant has been looking at alternative ways to extend a second raw water line from the Lake Winnebago up to their water plant property off of Manitowoc Road. One of the most viable routes for that property and that project is to actually run that through the City of Menasha Conservancy, kind of along one of our existing trails, whereas they would put that facility in and then they would basically reestablish that trail system in the Conservancy. So as part of that, staff did look at what is that easement worth, and obviously what the City of Menasha need for our growth moving forward. In the mid-1990s, the Appleton Water Plant annexed and purchased about 70 acres of property from or into the City of Menasha. They have developed on roughly 30 of those acres and leaving approximately 40 acres south of their existing water plant vacant. At this time, through the last 25 years or so, the city has grown substantially. We now have, again, a subdivision on both the east and west side of this landlocked piece of property. And what the city has looked at is the actual connection between the two road connections. So connecting Grassy Meadows on the east side to Woodland Hills Drive on the east side, and Grassy Meadows on the west side. So we have had this discussion with Appleton Water Plant and city officials with the City of Appleton, and again, where they had proposed and made a concession to the City of Menasha is what was attached. So they kind of in that attachment show kind of a recital of some history, and then kind of lay out the future interests to consider. Appleton needs to retain sufficient land to allow future growth of their water plant and its treatment process. Appleton is interested in installing a second raw water line for redundancy purposes, and a portion of which would travel through the Menasha property and conservancy, requiring an easement. Menasha is interested in constructing a roadway between Grassy Meadows Lane and Woodland Hills Drive through the southern portion of Appleton Water Plant property. Again, that roadway would allow additional residential development. We're estimating probably 22 to 24 residential lots could be developed in this area, as well as continue to add to our trail system. So over this past year, the City of Menasha Common Council approved the Province Terrace Boardwalk Trail just to the west of here, and then again extended as part of the Nature's Way, part of the second edition of Southfield, adding the 16 residential lots on the west side of this property, extended that trail system to basically to the Appleton Water Plant property. So what this allows us to do is add great connectivity for vehicle traffic, for pedestrian traffic, for our trail systems, and continuing to look to extend our eastern and western borders, in addition to allowing for residential growth, residential development, and the additional tax base. So Appleton Water Plant, or the City of Appleton, did look at what their estimate is for the fair market value. They kind of broke the properties into different segments. if you're looking at the map, I believe up on the screen, 1A is a large 10-acre wetland piece of property. And then the remaining portions, 1B, C, 2, and 3, would be developable, which total the whole value that they're looking at it is approximately $400,000 for this property. So again, staff would suggest that the Common Council adjourn into closed session to negotiate acceptable terms for the proposed investment of public funds and exchange of real estate, should you desire.
Does anyone have any questions for Director Schrader before we go into closed session? We would not want to discuss anything with the price before we go into closed session. Oh, Alderman Nichols.
Thank you, Mayor. Here we go. So other than establishing, wait, let me back up a second. This property is already in the city of Menasha, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So other than establishing an easement for the city of Appleton and their water plant needs, are there any time constraints, you know, or deadlines that need to be dealt with in regards to a purchase?
Director Schrader, do you know of anything?
Not necessarily. Obviously, you know, this has been out there a while. Obviously, budget season coming up this fall, and everyone's starting to work on those budgets and proposals for future projects in the next year or 2 years. So obviously, Appleton is looking at moving or understanding where the city of Menasha lies with their interest in basically what their concession was, to be able to move forward in their design and project planning for the second water line redundancy.
But to help me understand how their desire for an easement has to be connected to a land purchase on our end by the city of Menasha.
That was what opened the door for the start of the discussion. They did not wish to sell any of this property to the city at that point when we first started the discussion. We did bring back forward that the original annexation and the original plan for this area, even more than what we're looking at now, was supposed to be residential. And if they desired that easement through our property, we wanted to execute the original development proposal for the south half of their property as well. So once we give them that easement, we likely would have very little negotiating opportunity to get any of that property developed.
Okay. And other than an outright purchase at this point, are there other possibilities from our perspective that could be on the table to preserve our interest in land?
I'm not sure exactly what the question is. Do you have anything, Sam, or can you explain a little further what you're looking for?
What I'm saying is, okay, there's an obvious interest in the land, right, from the city of Menasha's perspective. And are there other things that we could do, that we could write into an agreement that preserve that interest for us in the time being without us having to purchase the land? So in other words, not moving forward with a purchase at this moment, but preserving our interest as part of offering them an easement.
Mayor, I have my hand up. Can I chime in on that?
Alderman Nichols has the floor right now, but we can definitely go to you
Okay.
next. I suppose anything is possible, Alderman Nichols, but I'm not sure what the advantage would be for the city to wait on developing this. We've already waited 20-ish years or more. So waiting longer, I'm not sure why we would want to do that. But if there was a reason, I suppose we could.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because I would just want to express my concerns publicly about moving forward with any sort of purchase at this moment. And I think, given that the decision about the dollar amount that's set aside for this was made in open session, is it safe for me to mention that number?
No.
Well, it was approved by the administration committee to put into the housing program.
But that doesn't mean that the entire amount would be used for this project. I mean, you can say what's in that program, but that doesn't mean that we'd want to necessarily spend all of that for this property, or any of it, as far as that's concerned.
Funds were earmarked, and that was done openly. So we're talking about $500,000. It's a substantial amount of money that has been set aside for such purpose. And we also have considerable concerns about our budget going forward. I mean, we're not saying we don't have concerns, but there are considerable questions now about this year's budget and potential impacts to next year's budget. And so when we're talking about spending that sort of, or having this sort of money available, we need to be conscious of the context in which we're making these decisions. We know that we have downtown businesses that are struggling with this new normal and staring a bridge project in the face in the coming years. We don't know of other emerging needs that might present themselves in the wake of the current situation. And so it's my hope that whatever happens, that we can, take those things into consideration as we look ahead into next year. And other options that I had thought of were to negotiate some sort of option over the next years that preserves our right, or or preserves our interest in the land, or even a first right of refusal in case someone else would present interest in that land.
An option certainly would be another opportunity that we could talk about in closed session. I did want to note that the funds, though, that you're referring to, those could only be used for a housing program. They couldn't be used for helping downtown businesses or any other budgetary problems that might move forward. They would have to be in some sort of housing program, or they would have to be returned to the taxing entities in TIF 6. We wouldn't be able to use that money for other items.
And perhaps those other taxing entities might have need for those funds as well. That's all I have now.
Okay. Alderman Severnick.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I respect what Alderman Nichols is saying. Is there another option, maybe delaying this or doing something, or entering into some new agreement? But you know what? We've entered into agreements with Harrison. Where did that go? We entered into agreements with Fox Crossing in the past that set future plans. Where did that go? So I think the opportunity is now. I think this is probably one of the top 10 best investments the city of Menasha can make to increase our tax base. And that's how you help your other taxing entities throughout the city, especially those businesses that you're talking about. So I think a lot of this needs to be discussed in closed session. Mayor, how do we do that? I mean, how are we going into closed session? Is there another way we go in where the public isn't on, or you just turn them off, or what? Hello?
I'm sorry, I didn't turn the mic back on. So you should have gotten 2 emails this afternoon. One
Right.
for the meeting that we're currently in, so we'll log out of this.
So then what? The
And then-
reason I bring that up is so the rest of the aldermen know that, so that when after I read this going into adjournment, we have to close this one out and go into the other one.
Yes, I'll explain that if the motion passes though as well.
Alderman
Okay.
Stepp, before you make the
Sure.
motion, I have one more
Sure.
question. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Is the city courting a developer for any sort of related residential development?
Director Schrader, would you like to comment on that one?
I think that should be in closed session too, but that's a good question.
Alderman Ropella?
Hey, Sam, are you still there?
Yes, would you like me to answer that? I had 2 conflicting.
No,
I don't think we should.
I agree.
Well, I think
I think it's a very good question, Alderman Nichols, but I think it's something that we need to discuss in closed session at this point.
Oh, what about mine?
well, I would think the public would have a right to know if
The
that.
public will have a right to know after we discuss these things. You have to understand the relationship with well, I'm not going to get into that, but
Well, the
whatever.
closed-
Mayor, you decide what you want to do.
My turn.
We don't go into closed session to try to hide anything. We do it for a reason,
Mayor-
because we're going to be
please.
deliberating or negotiating property here and investing these funds. And when you're dealing with businesses or something, you just don't open up the can of worms yet. You need to do this kind of stuff, then you bring it out to the public. So, but anyways, I'm off my rant on that.
Order,
I know there's some other people with their hands up.
point of order.
Yes.
Alderman Nichols?
Could I get a ruling from the mayor, the chair, on whether or not my question can be answered?
I think it would be best not to answer it at this point because that could be part of our negotiation strategy.
Well, thank you. I just needed an answer.
So,
That was my point.
Alderman Rapella, did you have something that we need to discuss in open session?
Yes, I was just, what was the cost of the land when we sold it to Appleton in 1996? How much did we charge them for the land?
We didn't sell it to them, Randy.
We didn't sell it to them.
No.
Okay.
Private.
And that
Okay.
would also be something that you'd want to discuss in closed session if we did.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Done.
Mark, did you have
Thank you,
something?
Mayor. I do. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
I know I mentioned this to Alderman Stefanik, that my feeling is, what I would like to see is we are going to be talking about a whole heck of a lot of money. And me, as an alderman doing this, I guess I would rather talk about this when City Hall is opened up. We've waited, how many years here? I don't think another month would matter. So I would like to see us postpone this until we can get into council chambers to discuss this. Thank you.
Stan, did you have anything else?
I was just going to move it to go into closed session. I agree with Mark, but I think some of this preliminary stuff needs to be discussed, and then we should have it open like Alderman Nichols wants when we do get together as a council.
Alderman
So with
Nichols?
that, I'm sorry.
Did you have something else, Alderman Nichols?
One more thing. The funds, since they've been earmarked and are part of the housing program and come from a TIF, can only be used for housing. Was that what I heard you say, Mayor?
For a housing program, yes. And this was one of the potential housing programs that they could be used for.
Thank you. Then I will go on the record saying that these funds then should be used for our housing program to focus on improving what we already have, as was the original intent of the program. Thank you.
Except for purchases.
Alderman
So,
Semenick,
Mayor, at this time, I'll move that we adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.81, Parent 1, Parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investigating of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. This is for the City of Appleton, City of Menasha, mutual land needs discussion.
Second.
there's a motion and a second. That was Alderman Ted Grady, correct?
No. Taylor.
Chris James.
Okay. So if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Taylor,
Yes.
Alderman Sevenick,
Aye.
Alderman Langdon,
Aye.
Alderman Schmidt,
Aye.
Alderman Tom Grady,
Aye.
Alderman Ted Grady,
Aye.
Alderman Rapella,
Aye.
Alderman Nichols.
Nay.
Motion carried on roll call 7-1.
Okay, so I should have sent everyone a second link. Did everyone get that second link?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this meeting off, and then you're going to, once we close out, then you're going to log back into the second meeting. And
Okay.
hopefully we'll get all of you. If I don't get all of you, I will call you.
Okay.
And get you back that way. And the second meeting
Yeah,
will
Mayor,
not,
I clicked, just so you know, I clicked that one first when,
you should
that's
still
why
be-
I was like,
Yeah, I clicked it too.
so it'll still work then, right?
it should still work.
Okay.
It was the same web address.
Right. But it had a little different time listed.
Yeah, it's just a separate meeting, so you should be fine. I'm
Right.
gonna
Okay.
turn this one off now, okay?
All right. Sounds great.